That's pretty good. What did they
Okay. So, this week's Torah portion, Parshas Voeschanon, right? What does Voeschanon mean? Voeschanon? It means, and Moshe Rabbeinu saying, it means, and I prayed to Hashem, but he uses a very interesting word. He uses the word Voeschanon, which is not the normal word for prayer. And it's usually translated as I pleaded, or I entreated, or I, begged from Hashem. And Rashi immediately comments on this strange word, and he says that the word Voeschanon it implies that Moshe Rabbeinu was asking for a matnas chinam, for a free gift, right? So there are times when you can ask somebody for something, and you make a deal with them, and you work things out, you come with a proposal, and then there are times when you come and you ask somebody to give you a gift for free, for nothing. And this is what the word Voeschanon implies. That Moshe Rabbeinu was asking for something that he did not deserve, and he's asking for Hashem to give it to him as a free gift, as a matnas chinam. Right? So the obvious question is, why? Moshe Rabbeinu was one of the greatest, perhaps the greatest, most righteous person in history, the holiest person in history. And he's coming and he's asking Hashem for a fairly simple request. He wants to go into the land of Israel. It's not that big of a deal, right? And he really should have, you might think that he has a right to demand to be led into the land of Israel. But Rashi says no. He comes to Hashem and he pleads and he entreats, says, I don't deserve it, but give it to me as a free gift. And there's a lot of discussion among the Midrashim what this represents and why tzaddikim in general like this approach. But one of the explanations that's given is that Moshe Rabbeinu, we know, was, as the Torah testifies, the most humble man upon the face of the earth. And therefore, he kind of felt he didn't deserve it. So what does this mean? How could the holiest person in the world, the greatest tzaddik, the greatest prophet in history, be so humble, consider himself so unworthy? Is this dishonesty? What sort of humility is this? So, it was the first day of Sukkot in the city of Lezhensk. And my great, many times great-grandfather, Rabbi Melech of Lezhensk, walks into shul, and as he's sitting in his place in front of the shul, he starts to sniff. Looking around, smelling, and he turns to his first day of Sukkot, and he turns to his gabbai and he says, "There's a special esrog over here. I smell a special esrog. Got to find out where the esrog is." So they send people to run around the shul looking around for esrogim. They said the Rebbe senses a very special esrog. All the rich people in Lezhensk right away pull out their beautiful esrogim, right? They show no spots anywhere. I'm telling, clean, beautiful, big. And they bring all the most beautiful esrogim to Rabbi Melech. Not the esrogim. Okay, they looked around some more. They brought him some medium esrogim, and he's like, it's not it. And finally he turns to his brother, Abzusha, and he says, let's go track down this esrog. So they start following their noses. They start walking through the shul, and all the rich people are like holding out their esrog. You want to smell, you want to...
Reminds me of the porn story. All the guys had their daughters outside for
Yeah. Over here, it's a slightly different. Here it's more, they're hoping they would have a holy esrog, right, for the tzaddik to use. Look, I how much I spent on my esrog. It's so beautiful. I traveled to a distant city. I got it from an esrog merchant, imported, I don't know, from Italy, wherever we got it from, the finest quality Italian esrogim, and they're all trying to show their esrog. When the Zusha walked right by, they walked to the middle of the shul, and then they start walking all the way to the back of the shul, and they walk all the way to the corner. And there's just this Jew, a stranger in town, nobody really knows who he is. and he sees the Rebbe coming towards him. He like turns away, like so tries to hide his esrog. The Melech says, "No, I got to see that esrog." He takes the esrog and he says, "This is the esrog I was looking for." And everyone's looking. It's a little skinny esrog. It's full of like little black spots all over. And he brought it to Rabbi before Sukkot to make sure it's kosher, but certainly wasn't a very nice esrog. And everyone's looking at the Rebbe. You sure this is the esrog that you're looking for? And he says, "Yep, this is the most beautiful esrog. This esrog smells like Gan Eden." And he turns to the owner of the esrog, of Uri, and he says, "Can you please tell me how you got this esrog, this beautiful esrog?" It's like, well, I very much value the mitzvah of esrog, and I usually save up money throughout the year to try to buy myself a nice esrog. I'm not very wealthy, not very rich, but I know how important it is to have a nice esrog on Sukkot. And this year I managed to save up 50 gulden, 50 gold coins, right? And a few weeks ago, I set out to the big city to buy a very nice esrog for Sukkot. And I'm traveling, and it was, and I stop off on the way. I stop off at an inn, and I walk into this inn. I see this Jew sitting there and crying, sobbing loudly. And I go over to him and I say, "Is everything okay? Can I help you?" He's like, "No, my life is over. My business is destroyed. Everything's finished." I say, What happened?" And he says, "My horse just died. I'm a wagon driver. That's how I earn my living. And my horse just died, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have money to buy a new horse, and I can't support my family without the horse." And people are gathering around, trying to comfort him. Everything's going to be okay. Hashem's going to watching over you. It's a this. There's a reason for it. They're all trying to comfort him. He's screaming. He's crying. He doesn't want to accept any of their words. He's like, maybe when your horse dies, you can discuss all these things. Not my horse that died, right? Finally, the innkeeper, he says to him, I myself have a few horses. If you want, I can give you a good discount on a horse. I have a pretty nice horse. I can sell you for 50 gulden. And he says, "I don't have 50 kopecks. You want me to pay 50 gulden?" And he's crying. And Uri, who just walked into the inn, he turns to the innkeeper and he's like, "This horse, this 50 gulden horse, can you, what would be the cheapest? You wanted to go rock bottom price, what would be the cheapest you'd be able to sell it for?" And he says, "Well, he obviously realizes that this guy wants to help out his friend, and he says, I can give it to you for 45 gulden. Okay, he reaches into his pocket, he pulls out his 50 gulden that he had saved up the entire year, and he gives away 45 gulden. The innkeeper gets out the horse, gives it to the wagon driver, and Uri quickly leaves the inn. And he continued on his journey. He arrived at the marketplace, and he comes to the esrog merchant, and he says, "I have 5 gulden. I want to buy a nice esrog. You're not getting a nice esrog for 5 gulden, but I have some leftover esrog. I'm not really sure if it's kosher. I have this bag where, with the esrogim that we have to ask the rabbi about. So you can look through that bag, and if you find something, I can give it to you. We can ask the rabbi about it." And I found the kosher esrog, but, I'm a little embarrassed to go home with this esrog. Every year I have a nice esrog. Many people in my town come to make the bracha on my esrog, and this year I'm going to come home with this esrog. I was a little embarrassed. I decided not to go home. I'll stay in Lejensk.
Not to go home for Yom Tov.
I decided to stay in Lejensk. I sent a letter to my wife. I let her know I'm going to be in Lejensk, and I decided to come to Lejensk for Sukkot. And Elimelech says, "This is the esrog I was looking for. This is the esrog with the smell of Gan Eden." He says, "I want you to know, I want to tell you over the rest of the story. Right? After you left the inn, this wagon driver, he's looking around. He has this new horse, and somebody paid for it, and he's looking around for you, and you're gone. And he doesn't know, he's asked the innkeeper, what happened? This guy paid for a horse. Where he left? Must have been Eliyahu Hanavi, right? Wow, Hashem sent me a new horse." He jumps up from his seat and he starts singing and dancing, right? He starts thanking Hashem. And he walks outside. He's so excited. He looks up at the heavens. He says, Hashem, how can I show my appreciation towards you? I would love to pray and thank you, but I don't know how to pray. Right? I don't know how to pray. But I do know how to crack my whip very nicely. That's what I do all day. I crack my whip. So Hashem, in your honor, I'm going to crack my whip 3 times. And he picks up his whip. 3 times. 3 cracks. And the Elimelech says that at that moment, this was a few days before Yom Kippur, and he says on Yom Kippur, Malach Michal is up in heaven gathering together all the mitzvahs of the Jewish people to bring in front of Hashem. And as he comes to the heavenly gates, he sees the whole road is blocked up with big sacks of sins, of Jewish Avedas from the past year. There's something that piled it up, and he's trying to get through with the mitzvahs, but it's hard to work your way through. And all the mitzvahs are loaded up on these wagons, and the horses are trying to push through, but they can't get through. And at that moment, suddenly there's this big, loud crack of a whip, and the horses push their way through, and they made it before Hashem's throne. So, we might look at an esrog and try to figure out the value of the esrog by looking at the esrog itself. Okay, well, did you have a lollipop? Yeah? Okay. No, I think 1 lollipop is enough. Okay? We'll get you some more food later. So,
There's no chips.
okay. So, you want to sit on my lap, Yossi? You're hungry. Oh.
Me too.
So, some of us may look at an esrog and try to figure out.
Oh, that's me telling me.
Is it? See?
Gluten-free? Come here. No, they'll say here.
See? No, it's
Vegan.
Linus. It's Linus. Sure. We'll get you food a little bit later. Okay?
If you can. Maybe that's okay.
So, many of us may look at an esrog and try to figure out the value of the esrog by looking at the esrog itself. But that's not the way you figure out the value of the esrog. The way you figure out the value of the esrog is by figuring out what the person gave up to get this esrog. What the person had to go through in order to get this esrog. What challenges, what hardships he had, and that's really what gives the esrog its value. Rab Chaim Vital once asked the Arizal, he said we sit all day and we learn Torah, but how does our Torah compare to the Torah of the earlier generations, right? The Gemara says that if the earlier generations were like angels, then we're like people. And if the earlier generations were like people, then we're like donkeys. So what is our Torah worth, he says to his Rebbe, to the Arizal. So the Arizal says, you don't understand. Yes, we're like donkeys, and we're nothing compared to the previous generations, but for that very reason, our Torah is much more precious in the eyes of Hashem than the Torah of the previous generations. A small mitzvah that we might do today, with our challenges that we have, in the darkness that we have, is worth so much more than what they had in the previous generations when they had the light, and it was easy for them to do mitzvahs, right? The Ruzhiner actually took this Gemara. He said, the Gemara says that if the earlier generations were like people, we're like donkeys, right? So he said, what does that mean? If a person walks into shul, right, and he starts davening, right, and in the middle of davening, he pulls out his phone, and he starts talking to his friends, and it's a little bit hard for him to read. He skips a few words here and there. What's everybody going to do? They're going to say, no, what was this? Don't know how to daven? Right? Oh, wow, Yossi. Okay, we're going to give you a little bit. Okay, here we go. I think this is a lot. Okay, here you go. That's for you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, right, if the person's sitting there mumbling the words, skipping some words, looking at his phone in the middle of davening, people are going to yell at him a little bit. They're going to be a little disappointed in his davening. But just imagine a donkey walked into shul, and the donkey picks up the siddur, and the donkey starts davening, and it says "moi" there, right? And it mumbles a few words. Everyone's going to come to see this donkey davening. Can you imagine? Yeah, people are going to come from far and wide to see the donkey davening.
Okay.
Right? They're going to, yeah, of course. Right? So this says the original. This is what the Gemara means. If the earlier generation are like people, we're like donkeys. It means Hashem really appreciates our davening today on a much different level than He appreciated the davening many, many years ago.
I think
Right?
I compared the person to a donkey. It's
There
like
is
a talking donkey, Philip.
So we have a talking donkey. We're like talking donkeys. We're this unique novelty that everybody comes to look at. Right? A yid today you can sit and learn and daven. It's amazing. The Mezritch Magid said that it's easier to connect to Hashem in our times than it was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, which is a little bit hard to understand. The Beis Hamikdash, they saw Hashem. So Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, he explained this with a mashal. He said that the king is in his palace, and one of the king's top ministers comes in and he says, "Your Majesty, I would like to invite you for dinner tomorrow night at my big fancy house." And what did the king has to turn him down. The king just doesn't eat outside the palace. Even a court minister isn't worthy of hosting the king. At least I don't know which country this is, but I guess whatever country they lived in at the time, that was the normal protocol. The king eats in the palace. The king doesn't leave the palace to eat at somebody else's house. If the minister wants to come, he can come to the palace. But then, a month later, the king is traveling on the road, and they're hungry at the end of a long day, and they stop over at a little inn. The king says, "The inn clean, of course. I'll come in and I'll eat. As long as the food is half decent, I'll eat it." Right? Why? Because now the king is away from his palace. He's wandering on the road, and the standards are a little bit different, right? And that's really what it's like today. The Maharsham, Sholem Mordechai Shvadron, the author of the Tcheles Mordechai, who's Rav in Brezhnev. I hear. You'll have to be happy with what you had. Okay? And if you wanted to take you home, you want to go home? No? Okay. If you're really hungry, you'd want to go home. No? Okay, then you're not that hungry. So he was, at a young age, when he was 17 years old, he was already known for his very sharp mind. He was known as a brilliant genius. And he did very well in yeshiva, right? He was the star of the yeshiva, sat and learned all day. And when he was 17, he became very, very ill. It seems like there was a plague going around, and he became very, very sick. The doctors came, they tried to give him medicine, nothing worked, and it became very, very severe to a point where they actually called the Chevra Kadisha. They thought it was over. And suddenly he began to sweat, and they realized that he still has a chance. And a while later, he opened his eyes, and Baruch Hashem, he made a full recovery. So they asked him, what was going on at that time? And he said over that his soul had left his body, and he was brought up to the heavenly courts, and they were judging him, right? And they were deciding what to do with him, right? He was very sick, and according to the laws of nature, his life was over, but they were deciding whether he's worthy of a miracle, whether he was worthy of being restored to life. And they come in front of the heavenly court, and one of the angels gets up, and he's like, who this is? This is a great Torah scholar. He sits and studies all day and all night. And another angel comes out, and he's like, why he studies? Yeah. He studies because he wants everybody to honor him. He studies because he wants everybody to talk about him, to respect him. He wants to get a good shidduch. I don't know if he was married at that time or not, right? So it's not really for the right reasons that he's studying. Okay, if that's the case, then it's not really worthy of any special miracle. And the court is about to rule that he should stay up in heaven. When suddenly there's a big commotion and the heavens begin to tremble, and this old man with a white beard appears. And he turns to the angel sitting up there in the court, and he's like, "Who are you? You angels who never had a Yesahara. never been in this world. Who are you to sit here and judge why a buck or a young man who has so many options with his life and so many temptations, and he decides to sit and learn all day, and you are sitting here in heaven judging him? If any of you would be down here, I don't think any of you would be able to face the challenges that he faces. And the court agreed with him, and that's when he says, my soul was sent back down, and I recovered. And of course, at that point, he decided that he would try to figure out how he could, obviously he's going to continue learning, but he has to figure out how to change. So he began wandering around from among many of the great rabbis of the generation. He told them over the story to try to figure out what this means in his life. And when he came to Rabbi Isaac of Zidichov, so when he first walked in, he fainted. This was the old man from his dream. And when he told Rabbi Isaac the story, which I guess Rabbi Isaac knew already, he asked him, "What's the message for me? Am I supposed to change my whole approach, start studying Torah Lishma? That's not an easy thing to do." So Rabbi Isaac told him like this. He said, obviously the message of your dream, the message of your vision that you had, was how difficult it is for people today to sit and learn and to serve Hashem. And therefore, since you were shown this, since this was revealed to you, so you have to do whatever you can to make it easier for them. So you are one day going to become a great posek, a great halachic authority, and therefore you should use your position to make it easier for the Jewish people to keep halacha, not to try to find extra stringencies, find ways to be more lenient. Obviously, within the bounds of halacha, but you have to find ways to be more lenient. And that's what he did. That's what he did. He wrote the Teilos Mordechai. What?
Is this donkey noises?
I think this is. He's trying to figure out what sounds he can make to get more chocolate chips. Yes, I think we had enough chocolate chips. Okay.
That'd be next week.
Yes, you want to sit in your seat? Okay. So you want to sit up? You want to continue sitting on my lap? Okay. So, and this, of course, is true throughout the generations as times got darker, and as we get closer to Mashiach, the Maggid and Mizrich said that in the generation before Mashiach, we're going to have a similar test to the one in the days of Achav, of King Achav, and the days of Eliyahu Hanavi. Right? We know in those times, most of the Jewish people worshipped idols, and many Jews weren't sure what's the correct approach. And there was the famous test, right, on Mount Carmel, when they held a contest between Hashem and the idols to see, who to serve. And he says before Mashiach is going to come, there's also going to be this difficult time, and there's also going to be a big test held. But he says the results are going to be very different. In times of Eliyahu Hanavi, the fire in the end came down on the altar of Hashem. Before the coming of Mashiach, the fire is going to come down on the other side, and we're still going to be expected to serve Hashem. Right? And obviously, we can imagine obviously what it takes, and how difficult it is, and how much Hashem appreciates it. And this says, the Rebbe explains, the Rebbe Rashab, is why Moshe Rabbeinu was so humble. Before Moshe passed away, Hashem showed Moshe the entire history of the Jewish people, up to the final generation. And Moshe looked at our generation. He looked, he saw me, he saw you, and he saw how we're living in a time when the world is so dark, when there's so many temptations around us, right? It's so easy to do something that's wrong, right? It's not like in the time of, we're not living in the desert where there's mun coming down from heaven, where we see the clouds of glory every day, where there's Torah and mitzvahs everywhere. If you want to sin, you have to run out somewhere, try to find the middle of the desert. We're even going to find the sin, right?
Figured it out.
It's difficult, right? It's hard. Today, there's sins everywhere, right? And we have to look around to try to find a mitzvah, right? The Shvaler Zayda, every year in Rosh Hashanah, used to obviously sit in his room for a while, speaking to Hashem. And he used to come out, and he used to go to the Aron HaKodesh, and he used to say, Hashem, what do you want from your people? Right? You wrote, of course, there's a great Gan Eden, where we're all going to be rewarded. Great spiritual rewards for doing mitzvahs. But where did you put Gan Eden? In a book. It's an obscure book called the Reishis Chachma. Right? A person wants to learn about Gan Eden, he has to find this Kabbalistic book and start looking through it, try to figure out what Gan Eden is, where Gan Eden is, and where did you put all the physical pleasures? You dropped us right in the middle of them. You put it all around us. He said, Hashem, I guarantee you that if you would have taken all the physical pleasures and you would have put that in the Reishis Chachma, and you would drop us into Gan Eden, we would all be perfect. We would have a perfect year. So what do you want from us, Hashem? Right? This is what you do. This is where you put us. Right? This is where you put us. And this is really why Moshe Rabbeinu turns to Hashem and he asks for a free gift. Because Moshe Rabbeinu realized, after seeing right before he passed away the history of the Jewish people, and realizing where his generation was and where he himself was, he realized, he came to the conclusion that maybe he doesn't really deserve any great reward. What does that mean? So there's the mashal. I heard this from official Shechter. This mashal about two neighbors. We'll call them Ruvain and Shimon. Right? Ruvain gets up Wednesday morning, middle of summer, and he looks at he hears a buzzing sound on his phone. He looks up. He sees he has a message from his boss. The boss says the air conditioner in the office is broken, so everyone could stay home today, a free paid vacation. Right? Beautiful, wonderful. He gets up with a big smile. Right? So he washes his hands, has brachas, gets ready to go to shul. He drives to shul and he pulls up, and right in front of the shul is a nice parking spot right in front. Parks his car, he gets into shul, and right in front on his table is a seat right in the middle. He comes, he sits down, and he looks at the chazan's getting ready to start hoidu just in time. He gets his tefillin on. As he finishes putting on his tefillin, the chazan starts, and he's sitting there and he's davening. Every davening goes so beautifully. He finishes davening, he's going out of shul, and Chaim comes running over to him. Reuven, you lent me $1,000 last month. I have the money. I have your money. You take it. Okay, fine. He takes the money. He doesn't have to go to work, so he stays in shul to learn a little bit. Right? He gets home, and as he's getting home, he gets a call from his son's school. Right? The principal's on the line. He says, Reuven, I want to tell you, your son, he had a test, and he did so well, amazing, everything. You should be so proud of your son. Not only that, his teacher told me how kind he is to the other classmates. Mamish, such nachas, right? Now there's a big smile on Reuven's face as he gets home. He comes home and he sits down to learn, and he has a day off, right? He sits down to learn. As he's learning, his wife comes in. He prepared him a nice big breakfast. He serves him breakfast, and he starts eating. Wow, it's a good meal. He benches and he continues learning for a few more hours. And as he finishes learning, he gets a phone call from the local shul had a Chinese auction, and he bought a few tickets. And they told him, you bought a ticket for the split the pot. You just won the 20 grand. Nice, pretty good, excellent. He's having a great day, right? And at that moment, as he hangs up the phone, there's a knock on the door. So he goes to the door, and he sees this meshulach. What? No. He sees this meshulach, this collector. He's coming all the way from Yerushalayim, and Reuven welcomes him into his office. And the guy starts telling him how he has a child who's not feeling good, and he has to marry off another child, and he needs this, and he has this problem, that problem. And Reuven listens to everything he has to say, and he encourages him. He takes out his checkbook, and he writes a nice check, and he gives it to this meshulach. And now, next door is Reuven's neighbor Shimon. Shimon also gets up Wednesday morning. He looks at his phone. And he also has a message, right? His message says, you better get into the office early today. We have this important meeting. Don't be late. And by the way, the air conditioner is broken. So right? He jumps out of bed. He sees it's a little bit late. He has to get to shul. He throws on his clothes. He manages to jump in the car. He pulls up shul. The whole place is full. There's no parking. He circles around the block, and finally, at the second time, he sees there's an empty spot. He's about to pull in when somebody comes from the other side and pulls in right in front of him. And so he has to drive like 5 blocks away, and he still doesn't find a spot. But finally, he sees there's a small little spot over there. It's going to be a little tight, and he finally manages to make it in when he hears one of his mirror got damaged a little bit. He gets out of the car. He's very upset, and he walks into shul, and his seat is taken by somebody else, of course. Right? So he has to look around for another place. He finally gets his tefillin on, and he sees the chazan just finished his Shabbat. So wait now 25 minutes for the next minute. He's already late. Right? Finally, after davening's over, he's running out, and Chaim comes running after him. He's like, you owe me $1,000 from last month. I don't have money. A little bit now. I'll pay you later, whatever. He runs out. He runs to work. He doesn't have time to get breakfast. And he comes in. His boss starts yelling at him. I told you to come early today. You came late. And gets an important meeting running. So he runs inside. Fine. It's the middle of the day. He gets a call from his son's school. Right? It's the principal. Well, your son was thrown out of class for the 3rd time this week. We need somebody going to come pick him up. No, I'm at work. I can't come. Right? If it happens again, we're going to have to send him out, right? Okay, he hangs up the phone, and he finishes his day at work. He comes home, obviously not in a very good mood, exhausted, tired, and he's hungry. He didn't eat breakfast, so he comes in. He sits down at the table waiting for some food. His wife looks at him and says, "What are you doing? Sitting down? You see a mess over here? I'm holding the kids, and you sit down waiting for food? Pick up a broom and start cleaning." Right? So he runs up, he picks up the broom, he starts cleaning, and as he finishes cleaning, he also gets a call from the shul. Right? They say, you bought a ticket in a Chinese auction? Yeah, I win? No, your check bounced. We need it's a credit card, you got to cover the chargeback fee. And as he finishes with that phone call, there's a knock on the door. Right? The same Meshulach who just visited Reuven comes to Shimon's house. Shimon also invites him in, and Shimon also listens to his long story, and he encourages him. And he also pulls out a check. He might not be the same size check as Reuven gave, but he also gives a decent donation, right? So if we were to look at these 2 checks that are written, right, you might compare. How are you going to compare the checks? Are you going to say Reuven's check is a little bit bigger than Shimon's check? Or are you going to say it's incomparable, right? The challenges that Shimon had that day, his smaller check is worth 100 times as much as Reuven's big check, right? And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu realized. Moshe Rabbeinu realized that I'm like an angel. I went up on the mountain. I spent 40 days with Hashem. I saw the Shekhinah. The next 40 years, we were wandering around the desert. Hashem spoke to me. My entire generation was sustained with man from heaven, with clouds of glory. Of course I was a big tzaddik. Of course I did a lot of mitzvahs. Do I deserve a reward for that? Maybe yeah, maybe not. When I look at the future generations and I see the challenges that they're going to go through, they're the ones who really deserve a reward. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu turns to Hashem and he says, Hashem, I want a matnas chinam, Voeschanon. I want a free gift. I don't know if I deserve it. Right? After seeing the future, what people in the future are going to go through, I don't know. For me, I'm asking you for a free gift. Right? And we all have to realize that today we're living through a time when it's not a free gift. Right? We're living through a time of darkness, a time of challenges. But we have to realize that we're the talking donkey. Right? We're the dirty little esrog that has the smell of Gan Eden. Right? We're our mitzvahs, our small little mitzvahs are what's really precious in the eyes of Hashem and what really help us achieve greatness. L'chaim, l'chaim.